right. Good morning. Welcome to part 3. This is the fun part for me. The theory, which was part 1. This we know about me already. The theory, which was part 1, was really the foundation. We needed to get our head right to understand what it means to build a brand and what strategies and principles you need to understand in order to build it right. Session number 2, we talked about getting more practical, how that translates into the initial launch of a brand, what assets you need, why those assets, what those assets are going to do for you, and how to utilize them and execute on them properly so that people receive you the way that you want to be received. But perhaps the hardest part of it all is, okay, how does that translate into year 1, year 2? How does that become a recognizable brand? You could even say that launching is easier, right? Building it is easier than maintaining it. Because maintaining it means there's going to be hundreds of more decisions to make and directions to go in and not to go in that need to all go back to why we made these decisions to begin with. And you want this to be maintained over time. One of the hardest parts back, I remember in agency life when I was working for a branding agency, is you could build this beautiful strategy, present this amazing story, create a great website, hand it over, and within 6 months they're kind of going in every direction because those decisions that come after don't necessarily come easy if it's not understood how you need to make those decisions and why. So today we're going to look at what it means to become you and to remain you over time, what it means to scale when that doesn't just mean a website, but it means social, it means events, it means swag, it means thought leadership. What do those things look like? And we will not cover every single thing, but we'll show you examples and how that could translate further. And we're going to end with understanding when it's time to evolve that brand, what you need to be thinking of at that time, and what kind of triggers that evolution period. Okay, so it starts with knowing ourselves. We're going to talk about what not to do at field events and other types of decisions. We're going to talk about what it means to be social with your brand, because it's simply a massive channel nowadays that is hard to ignore or kind of deprioritize. It's simply so impactful, and when it's time to evolve. So let's go back to how we started. The way we started was this theory I presented called cognitive behavioral branding. This was kind of the 3 pillars that helped us understand who we are as a brand, the decisions that we make. We start with our beliefs, which is our positioning, our core vision, the category that we exist in or that we're building, and that translates into the narrative, right? Our personality is the style, the voice, the visual side of us, the personality in terms of the archetype, right? We talked about the leader, the hero, the sage, the rebel, things like that, who we are, and the behaviors, how we show up when people actually interact with us, when people are reading, when people are watching, when people are standing in front of us, what that looks like. And that's what we really want to focus on, what we're going to do with all of this, how all of these pieces above are going to translate into this over a sustained amount of time. And that starts with knowing who we are. So what that means, knowing who we are, is really considering, as we come up to these decisions over time, as a marketing machine, as trying to get our product in the minds of our consumers, is how do I want to turn who I am into the assets that I'm going to deliver over time? What am I passionate about as a brand? That answer should inform what is my blog going to be. Now, we talked about blog in session 2. I gave an example of Gong, where their passion is showing how sales can be a science, or should be a science, and it shouldn't be get the experts who know how to wine and dine and who know how to play a few rounds of golf and could get people to say yes if they're in the right mood and had enough drinks, right? That is not sales. Sales should be data-driven, and their blog shows that. Their blog is a complete one-to-one translation of what their passion is, what their message is. Thought leadership should be the same way. And that also means, and the example I gave in last session was, when we at Island, the brand that I'm running, we have the ability to talk solely about security and breaches and vulnerabilities, and there was a new attack on the browser, and here's how we fix it. But that would turn us into a security-driven, shock and awe, danger-driven company. That's not the conversation we want to have. We wanted to have an enablement conversation, which means whenever there was a vulnerability that we actually helped you avoid by design, we didn't even talk about it. We instead talked about how you can enable AI, generative AI, safely in the workplace, which isn't even talking about the vulnerabilities of generative AI. It's talking about the enablement of generative AI in the workplace. That is a very clear orienting of the conversation based on our passion. And I urge you to think about, okay, what do I want my customers, my audience, to think I care about? What do I want them to care about as a result of interacting with me, as a result of encountering me? And that is just as important as, what am I not passionate about? What do I want them to avoid thinking I care about? Don't talk about those things, even if you have a chance, even if there's an opportunity to capitalize on something. If it's going to steer everyone in the wrong direction, give them the wrong impression of me, then I don't want them to think about that. How do I want to be remembered? When I have an encounter with someone, how do I want them to think about who I am when I leave? And now all they have is the thoughts and impressions of me beyond that conversation. Well, a gift, for example, the whole idea of giving a gift is, I want to leave you with something that you'll remember me by. And there are many types of gifts to give out. Many of them include mugs and stress balls and t-shirts, because those are obvious, those are budget friendly. Those at some point in time, maybe 20 years ago, were seen as like a novelty, something interesting. But is that how I want you to remember me by? Now, there are many things that go into that. The color that I choose to put, to brand those gifts, which could either be my brand color or some exciting color that will grab your attention. The messaging on those gifts, the quality of the gift. Is it cheap? Is it high quality? Is it interesting? Do I not have one of these? Is it meaningful to me, or is it just kind of a toy? We'll get into that in a second. What do I wear when I personally go to a special event? What would my brand wear if they were invited to a special event? The dress should translate into, this is how we like to carry ourselves as a brand. Our booth, if it's classy, then it means our brand is classy. If it's fun and weird and interesting and exciting, that's our brand. A company that did that well recently is a company you may have heard of called Wiz. They're not doing too badly for themselves, but their branding is quite interesting. They showed up to the RSA conference, one of the biggest cybersecurity conferences in San Francisco, with a whole Wizard of Oz theme, obviously playing off the Wiz, but they had a Dorothy and a Scarecrow and a Tin Man, and they had a yellow brick road going through. They wanted to have this magical side to them come through, and maybe it was gimmicky, and maybe it hit for some and not for others, but it did feel like they were being true to who they were, with having this wonderment, this magical feeling to who they were. How do I celebrate achievements, right? There are people who, when they win something, they jump up and down and scream, or they just give a handshake and they smile. Are we classy about it? Are we loud about it? What do we want people to know about us when we win something? That's how we show up when we have an awards section or a review section on our homepage. How do we show up when we want to promote that we won an award? Winning an award is a very important validation play, especially for early stage startups where validation is one of the biggest gaps. How do I talk about awards? And we're going to get to that in a minute. What's it like to grab coffee with me? If I'm a brand and we get to have a conversation, the brand being a person, and we're having coffee and we have 10 minutes, what is that interaction going to feel like? Is it going to feel very corporate? Is it going to feel like bros having, grabbing a beer instead of a coffee? Is it going to feel laid back, casual, conversational? Obviously, that has a lot to do with tone of voice, but that's really what social should be. I am having a conversation with you over coffee. It happens to be digitally. There's no coffee being poured, but that's the experience that I want to scale on social. And these are the types of questions that will lead to these answers. What's my spirit animal? This is a kind of an interesting one, right? What is the type of animal or the type of thing that I could identify with that would lead to, okay, how do I walk? How do I move? And that translates into when I have animations in my videos, which is something that maybe none of us are thinking about right now. Or when I have transitions in my homepage, when I want to make animated explainer videos. Is it choppy, punchy, boom, boom, boom? Is it smooth like a fish or like a bird soaring through the sky? These are things that are going to send tiny signals that mean a lot to people over time of what we are. Where do I like to hang out? Where would I be okay with me running into someone, a customer? Or where would it be awkward for me to run into someone? If my brand was in a nightclub and my customer was there, would that be like, oh, I wish I wasn't seen like this? If it was at a country club, these are the types of things that mean, okay, where do I want my ads to show up? Where do I want to be presented so that I will be associated with the right things and the right feelings in the right places? So as you can see, these are all questions that don't necessarily have easy answers, but if we know who we are, if we know why we are presenting ourselves a certain way, we actually have pretty straightforward answers to a whole long list of questions. And these are just some of the main ones. So think about what it means to create a brand that works well with all of these things, that gels together, right? Because the idea is that all of these things are just little pieces of who we are, that when people run into them, when people encounter them, they're going to put those puzzle pieces together of who we are in total. And once that happens over time, which is really what year 1, year 2 is like, you run into us at an event and you get a gift. You see our booth, you see that we won an award, you interact with us every week, or we show up on your feed every week on social, you catch a video of us, you see us in a banner ad next to a blog. You're capturing all of these things and it's forming a picture. Now when it's not thought out, you're going to get different impressions and maybe you won't be able to put those puzzle pieces together. But when it's thought out well, and it is done in these 4 ways that I'm about to show you, people will say, okay, I know who they are. I get who they are. I can start forming opinions about how I feel about them, as opposed to not getting a good sense of what I'm looking at, and therefore I can't even form a judgment. I can't even create a connection. And these are the 4 things that need to be considered above all else when we're putting these pieces together. Number 1, we need to be consistent. Consistent means I'm not one color one day and another color another day, unless it's part of a color scheme. I'm not really loud and then really quiet. I am not, I'm not doing all sorts of different things in different ways. And you will see that happening all the time, especially in field events. I have a lot of baggage when it comes to field events, you'll see in a second. But you'll see brands show up in completely different ways and completely different in different shows. I think because they're just trying to get your attention and they're not paying attention to how we are remembered afterwards, how those pieces are being puzzled together. Number 2, we need to be authentic. That means if we are something, if we are the wizards, magical, we need to just be that. And we can't try and be other things. If we are classy and formal and corporate, and that's what we are, and for some brands that is very important because they work with banks or because they work with C-level, and then they need to stay that way, and they need to continue to be that way. And we're going to show you examples of what that means. You need to be opinionated. That means you need to have your strong stance, what you believe in. That's that first part of cognitive behavioral branding, your belief, and you need to bring it every time. And you can't back off of it. And if you look at field events and if you look at social, there are
Let's now talk Fortnite, shall we? It's the newest video game craze, spreading fast among kids, college kids, even celebrities.
Kids are nuts for this Fortnite.
Fortnite has taken over the gaming world, becoming the most streamed game on Twitch ever. But brands are left out of the action, either tweeting from the sidelines or paying big bucks for in-game sponsorships. So when Fortnite announced a new event called Food Fight between Team Pizza and Team Burger, Wendy's saw an organic weigh-in. We found out Team Burger stored their beef in freezers. And Wendy's doesn't do frozen beef. So we got on Twitch, chose a character with red hair and pigtails, dropped into the game, and instead of killing other players, we started destroying burger freezers. Again and again and again, for 9 hours straight. We also declared our mission on Twitter, sending hundreds of thousands of gamers to Twitch to watch us play. And soon other players stopped killing each other and started killing burger freezers with us.
Hey, Wendy's, dude, let's go!
Top Twitch streamers took notice.
I saw a Wendy's stream over here, dude.
Oh, you smacking the burgers freezers?
This shit's lit. Bro, this kind of stuff keeps the game fresh.
Thank you so much for coming to the stream, Wendy's.
News outlets were talking about it. Even Twitch posted a highlight reel of Wendy's best freezer kills. Then, our own competitors showed us some respect. But most importantly, the game developers removed the freezers from every burger restaurant, meaning Wendy's had rid Fortnite of frozen beef forever.
Pretty epic. I love showing this example because I don't know how they thought of it. I'm eternally jealous of whoever inside that company came up with the idea. But the way to organically send a message in an interesting way is think about how they could have done any ad that just say our meat is 100% fresh all the time. Okay, like I like it. It sounds good. I imagine that means that when I eat a burger, I'll feel a little better about it. But now I gain this loyalty all because of creative. It didn't have to do with authenticity, with consistency. It just meant I took that message and thought of a different way to communicate it. And I suddenly captured everyone's hearts and minds. And that's an important piece. So let's get practical. We talked about some examples in that list of what am I passionate about, how do I show up to events. I want to show you some of the decisions that I made because it's really impossible for me to anticipate the types of decisions you need to make, or sorry, the actual decisions you need to make. I'll show you the decisions that I had to make and why, and how some of them paid off pretty nicely so far. So I mentioned at the beginning, don't give away Legos. Here's a company, if you recognize it, I tried to black out because the point isn't to shame anyone, but they're advertising for showing up to Black Hat, a security conference showing up in a week from now. Uh-oh, I think someone recognized it, right? And and they're giving away Legos and a robot dog, which is enticing, sounds interesting, sounds fun, but it sends a message about what you are and what you care about. We're going to give away a toy. There is something nice about it, and there might be a certain time and place and a certain type of company where this would actually be the right move. But giving away a toy means I'm not giving you something of tangible value beyond entertainment or something I would give to my kids. If I am marketing to executives or to adult security admins, this might be something that they would be casually interested, I don't know, but it wouldn't necessarily be an association I would want to make with my company. I don't want you to think, oh, we like toys, or we, you know. So there's a version here where the value here is nice and interesting, but the connection made is not the right connection that I want to make. And there are companies all throughout these events that are giving away Star Wars Legos, that are giving away a toy helicopter. And I, myself having a bunch of kids, I enjoy this, but I know I make any connection with any brand through maybe winning a toy helicopter. There was even a company that I was at a conference in London a month ago that gave away a motorcycle. And at the end of the event, there was a couple hundred people around their booth waiting to possibly win a motorcycle. And it was exciting. And one person walked away with the motorcycle, and everyone else didn't. And nothing of that experience had to do with their company or their brand. And ironically, I love pointing out at these things, what you're doing by giving away something really big is making one person really happy and making a lot of everyone else disappointed. And they're going to associate not winning something with the experience of being at your brand, which is an interesting thing. That's raffles. But also the idea of I want to pay for your attention by giving you the sense that you might win something, right? The exchange of value in that moment is I'm going to just hand you something that you might like, But it has nothing to do with what we can really offer you. It's simply, I want to buy your attention or your presence for as long as I can. And
Sorry, but
yeah.
what's the difference between giving socks and giving Legos?
Okay, so there might be value in giving socks on a simple free gift that has nothing to do with your attention or coming to the booth. Meaning to say, if I'm not marketing, come to the booth, I'll give you socks, I'm not giving this to you in exchange for your attention. I'm giving it to you as a sign of goodwill, as here, I want you to go walk away with something. But if I'm using it as a way to bring you to me, then it's saying that what I have to offer you, I need you to show up, and I'm going to give you something that isn't connected to what I have to say in order to get you, to convince you to pay attention. And our brand, Island, the brand that I was representing at these events, our whole story was, we don't want to sell it to you. We want you to want to buy it. So if we have to convince you to come over here and we have to literally buy your attention, then we are already failing in terms of the feeling that we want you to have when you are experiencing us. So we did not want to raffle anything off. We wanted, first of all, our giveaways to be consistent with the story that we were telling, and we didn't want to be the way that we got you to show up. The booth itself that we built was meant to be our story in every possible way. The idea of Island was no walls. Every other security company, in terms of protecting data, is trying to build gates, firewalls, heavy separations between you and data so that it won't go in or out. The whole idea of Island is, no, you could work freely while still being safe. The idea of creating walls inside a booth didn't make sense to me in that sense. But if there aren't walls to actually show you information or whatever, where do I put the information? Where do I put the wow moment? And I said to myself, it's either under you or above you. It's either below or above. And there were some companies with LED tiles on the floor. I didn't like the idea of stepping on our message, so I thought of above and created a 16-foot dome where we had 4 different mini stories taking you into different environments that told metaphorically the story of Island. We brought you to a beach in Maui, to the Pacific Northwest, to a rainforest. We brought you to the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, and to the coral reef of, I forget which one. And as you could see, you could walk in from any direction. The corners was where you could get a demo. The carpet was light colored. Everything felt airy. You could sit and enjoy looking up. And the idea was natural state. Everything here was meticulously decided upon because we wanted to tell the story through all the senses. We even had an aroma diffuser with ocean smells so that you would feel like you're in a different place. You're in where you should be. And this is what it Welcome to the Island booth at RSA Conference 2023. What we did here was show you what work can be if it's in its most natural state. We created a dome immersive experience with natural environments and a narrative that connects each of those to the Island product, to the enterprise browser.
I gotta tell you, I've been coming to RSA. This is my 20th year in a row, and by far the best experience I've ever had.
At first, when I see the demo, I think that it's an incredible idea. Oh my God, this is really amazing.
I love the concept. It's all about not only security, but enhancing the work environment, productivity.
That was the idea. We don't have to go through all the different things, but there were people that wanted to come in and just sit down. There were people that enjoyed watching. They came back a second or a third time and brought their friends. And the conversations that we're having was, this feels so well thought out. This feels like you really knew what you were doing. And that's the authenticity, right? And that's the opinion. We want to tell a specific story that security can feel natural, and we want to be authentic about it so that everything is in place. Keep in mind, and I don't want to, this isn't about bragging, this was our first RSA. This wasn't our 7th or our 8th. This isn't when we got it right. This was us showing up for the first time, and we had those reactions of, it looks like you've been here for 20 years. And that was the idea. It looks like we've been there for 20 years because we thought about everything, and we tried to deliver that experience as if everything was part of the same puzzle. Yes?
Yeah, I remember the giveaway was chopsticks, right?
Chapstick.
Yeah. Why?
That was a bad decision. I didn't make it. For a sore subject for another time. It was for a private event done for a specific dinner. They ordered 2,000 of them. They said, let's just bring them everywhere. And it was a fail. We actually got rid of them. But they didn't look like something recognizable, so people asked and were like, maybe this is a good thing that our gift isn't clear. So people walk up and say, what is this? But then when we say it's chapstick, they're like, oh, okay. And they walk away. So yeah, we don't always get it right. Okay, let's talk about awards as another example. This is a great example of not just the personality and the story, but what we're trying to accomplish. So our brand was building a new category. This means there's a budget line that didn't exist, a need that didn't exist in our customers' minds that we needed to tell them about, which means you cannot sell something to someone that they don't think they need. We needed to educate them that this is something they need, this is something they needed to find budget for, whether it's take it from somewhere else by replacing it or finding new money, which means every opportunity we had to promote us was an opportunity to educate about the need for us and not the need to buy us. And there's a very small but important difference, subtle but important difference to that. Think about the way winning an award typically goes. We won, we're great, check out our product, right? Check out us. The award is usually about you. You won the award. But if you're building category, if you're within year one of trying to help people understand, we just need to get your head wrapped around this idea that you need something like this. And if we tell the story really well, then the minute it clicks that you need the category that we are selling, you'll come to us. That's the classic model of category marketing. So then even when we win an award, it's not about us. It's about the category. So we were lucky enough to win an award for Best Enterprise Security Solution. And we asked ourselves, okay, how do we tell the story of our category with this award? And in that initial conversation, the question I remember popped into our heads of if we're a browser and security professionals don't even think of browsers as a security tool, then maybe the story here is why did a browser win Enterprise Security Solution of the Year? And then we could tell the story of how a browser became an important security tool and important enough to win the award. And we said, okay, why don't we tell that story visually with a video?
A browser was just named the Best Enterprise Security Solution by SC Magazine. A browser. How did that happen? Okay, let's rewind a bit. Years ago, work slowly started moving to the web. Then things started to speed up. Software became a service, and work went everywhere. Now, basically all work is done online, on a browser. The same browser we use to shop, play, watch, chat, and, well, browse. Which is why we do some pretty outrageous stuff just to work safely on a browser that was never meant for work. Things like breaking encryption to inspect traffic, using a virtual desktop, putting proxies, gateways, and VPNs everywhere. Then, two enterprise security veterans had a crazy thought.
What if you reimagined the browser, but for the enterprise?
What if the browser would play ball with the enterprise?
And with that, the enterprise browser was born. Organizations now control, see, and govern everything happening in the browser, while users get the smooth browsing experience they know and love. Everyone wins. They showed it to investors. They were all in. They showed it to customers. They said,
oh my gosh, this changes everything.
I was blown away, honestly.
Literally worked within minutes.
They showed it to everyone else. And let's just say say they were very interested. Turns out, the best way for enterprises to work on a browser is by using a browser designed for work. And that's how SC Magazine named a 6-month-old browser the best enterprise security solution of the year.
So that was a story about Island, but it wasn't a story about Island. It was a story about enterprise browsers becoming an important player in the enterprise security space. We put that video together in 2 weeks, which is why there's a lot of stock footage, which I am typically against. And brand-wise, that wasn't our best showing of who we are as a company. But it was the story that mattered, and it was engaging from beginning to end, at least I thought so. And it was our second highest performing social asset after launching with $100 million, which will get a lot of attention, right, by default. So it worked.
Where did you publish the movie?
On LinkedIn. On LinkedIn and YouTube, but we don't really invest a lot in YouTube yet. So LinkedIn was our go-to channel.
And what about PR, like using other distribution channels or?
So we had the article, the award article itself that we used for PR. We had a blog that we posted this on, and we posted it on LinkedIn. So we did build a campaign around it. But the video itself on the feed was the most important thing for us, because once you have a video, the articles are just kind of reflecting the details. There's not much else you need to know unless you want to know. So yeah, and another important thing, this was not, I mentioned the timing of it, 2 weeks. This was some stock footage, this was explainer video footage that we had, this was customer testimonial footage that we had. Nothing here we needed to create from scratch except for the script. And that's the creativity part at the end. It's thinking, if we are educators of category, then we need to turn this into an educating moment. And that's the takeaway from this part. Not everyone is category educators, but it means if my product is meant to show you something new about a category that exists, then when I win an award, the award is an opportunity to educate you on that new thing that you're missing because you're used to what the category already is and what we can do differently. Yeah.
How do you do that and differentiate from the other new emergent category definers in your category?
At this time,
one or the other?
No, it's a great question. At this time, the conversation around enterprise browser was basically us and one direct competitor, and we were both saying the same thing because we needed everyone to even get their heads around this idea. So there wasn't as much differentiation needed. It was more education than differentiation. When it's differentiation, then it wouldn't be this play of talking about the story of the enterprise browser, but it might be talking about the story of the old game and the new game. This is what everyone's been doing in this category forever, and this is why it hasn't been working. And the reason why a company that does this won the award is because they figured out where the gap is, where the new game is, where you should be playing next. So the story needs to be adjusted to be less about educating about the category in general and more about the positioning within that category. But the idea is the same, of using an award as a platform, because people are going to pay attention. You have a platform for around 4 hours, right, before everyone keeps scrolling. What do I want them to be, noticing? Do I want them to say, look at us, we won things, which doesn't come off always the right way, or do I want them to understand why we won something? Okay. We did it again for another award that we won. Here we wanted to focus on customers.
It's just such a different approach. My mind went wandering in a million different directions. It just so fundamentally changes how we think about solving problems. It just checked so many boxes of what we were missing. We can do things that we didn't used to think we could do. I've never been able to do that. It really is a game changer. I absolutely
So here's another Jedi mind trick move that we did, which is awards are typically self-congratulatory, right? We're trying to say, look at me, we won something. The value exchange is off. You're not getting anything for us saying we won an award. We're simply trying to get you to look at us and clap for us or give us your money, right? What if we could turn the message into a neutral one, where it's customers talking, where it's people who are validating us from the outside saying, no, this is legit, this is real. So we didn't say a word in this entire video to announce that we won an award. We let others do the talking for us, which offset that inherent bias that comes with saying we won something. So it was another move about telling a story around innovation. And again, we focused in on what the award was. This is a word for innovation. So this story had to be about why we would be innovative. And then we let our customers tell you why. And we avoided that whole uncomfortable look at us, pat us on the back. Okay. Here's another very recent one that I just added in yesterday, actually, to this meeting. Reviews. We put a large focus on getting customers to give us positive reviews, or to give us reviews, I should say, unbiased reviews on Gartner Peer Insights for us, but it could be in any number of G2, on Product Hunt, or wherever, right? Now, this is another example where it's typically going to come off as showing off, right? Look at all the reviews we have. And then you start to wonder, are these real? Are these paid reviews? Are these friends and family giving reviews? Can I trust this? Anyone who's telling you to look at their own reviews, there's automatically some bias. Now, we started to look at the reviews we had, and we realized that every review had a dislike section. You had to put it in. It was a required field in the review. But the dislikes were actually pretty awesome. For the most part, it was something like, selfishly, I would like to see a consumer version of this for personal use. That's not a dislike. That's actually like a kind of an awesome compliment in the dislike section. And it was happening over and over again. And we realized, well, if instead of talking about all the likes, which is the obvious move, we actually made a campaign about the dislikes, maybe we could get your attention and offset some of that awkwardness or that bias that you're used to seeing. And here's what we came up with. When a company shares its product reviews, it usually chooses to only show the positive ones. But that's only part of the story. There's the dislikes, right? We believe you deserve the whole story. So in the spirit of transparency, here are some of the things our customers disliked about Island. Automatically, we had people's interest, because before they were about to read a company list you all the things that their customers didn't like about their product. And here's the quotes that we had. This is actually just some of them, but it solves such an expansive list of difficult to solve use cases that it can be challenging to narrow down, since so many are valuable to us, right? Some people gave comments of like, what's your biggest weakness? I'm a perfectionist, right? That type of thing. There's not much else I would say I disliked. It's very similar to Chrome and easy to transition. It can be challenging getting others in the org to see that we finally have a viable option for a real BYOD program. It's hard to get everyone in the organization around the fact that this actually works, right? Early on, there were some issues, and this was honest and open, and we wanted to be vulnerable about it. But the Island team worked quickly to resolve these as soon as they were identified, and any security practitioner would understand that that's par for the course. Things are going to happen early on, but the responsiveness is actually what you want to see and not just the perfection. It's such a unique and novel approach, you'll have to rewire the legacy architectural thinking of some others in the organization, and then check out the other reviews on Peer Insights. This was in our top 5. This only went live 2 weeks ago. This had a 56% engagement rate, which means more than 1 per every 2 people decided to look through this when it went on their feed. That our PR firm said they've never seen that in their lifetime. We got something like 7,000 impressions, and we have 10,000 followers, which means if you're just putting the number, 70% of the people that follow us stopped and looked at this. 5% is usually a very good number. So something went right here, and this was a a nod to creativity, where when you have something good that you want to say, don't just say it. Think about, what are we trying to accomplish here? Is this us? Are we the ones that brag about it? And by the way, there are some companies, Harley Davidson might say, we won a ton of awards, deal with it, right? They might choose that angle because they're leaning into who they are. But if you are a certain way, think of everything you want to say in the context of what opportunity we have here to say it so that it lands the way we want it to land. We talked about gifts, Legos in the beginning. We gave away a 6-month subscription to a wellness app. I actually emailed them and got in touch with the founders, and we set up a whole partnership where we can give away a certain amount of licenses for 6 months. But the idea is, number one, I didn't like the idea of people walking around with stuff of ours. It's kind of annoying, although it's understood that there's a bag and you pick up a bag, and if you don't want to be walking around with something all day, the novelty of having it ends up becoming a burden, especially if you have a small carry-on and you came from a different part of the country or a different country, and now I have to fit it into my bag, and all of those issues seem to be problematic in terms of us making life smoother and simpler. What if we didn't have to give you anything but a card, but a QR code? What if it helped you for the next 6 months down the road? What if it was just something you could plug into to make your workday better? So all of these themes were actually deeply connected to our story, to who we were and what we wanted you to be, what we wanted to be remembered by. So this is actually a cool thing where you could plug in your headphones or whatever, connect your headphones, and it takes you to different environments around the world, and it has this dynamic surround sound effect where you actually feel like you're inside that environment, and it's meant to give you a release at work. And that's exactly what work in its natural environment is. Putting you in your natural environment, or in a natural environment, putting work in its natural environment. It was a direct parallel. This was something I thought of in the shower, by the way. It wasn't this deep meeting that happened. Creativity can happen at any time, right? So that's what we mean by gifts that can resonate. By the way, was this perfect? Not really. So I'm not always going to say it went right. What you're doing is you're asking someone to hold on to that card and remember it, and then they need to take an action to use it, then they need to sign up. In 6 months, they would need to start paying unless they canceled the subscription. That might be a reason why not to try it, because I don't want to remember in 6 months that I have to not pay for this. There's a flip side to not giving them something physical. I liked the idea of not burdening them with something, but it also meant we had less of a footprint in their world for that day. We were less visible. There was another part of it. We were less visible. When someone gave you a neon orange bag, and you saw 50 neon orange bags around the showroom floor, it was impossible not to see. That wasn't our play, because we're not the neon orange brand. We're not trying to grab your attention with, shock and awe. But that move worked in a way. So we did pivot in certain ways, and we did learn from it. But the thinking behind it, I think, made sense. The execution might not have been went as well as we wanted. It's important to be honest and real when we can. Okay. The bottom line here of all these examples is, when you know who you are, the decisions at any touch point along these first 2 years of what we should do, what we should write about, what events we should show up to and what events we should not show up to, how we should dress, why are we choosing this gift and not that gift, how we make sure that when we run this, when we present that we won an award, that it hits the right way, and that it doesn't just look like we're patting ourselves on the back. All of that becomes easy because we know who we are. We know what our beliefs are, what our personality is, what we're trying to do in terms of building a category or etch out a certain positioning within that category. If it checks off that list, then we'll know we'll do it right, right? So a good example for us, there are several times where we were approached by analysts to review our product and write a long comparison piece between us and the competitors. sounds like a great idea. It means, you know, we're one of the best in the industry at this thing. If our product is better in certain ways, people will be able to see how we're better. We declined, and we actually pissed off the guy by declining, because it would be weird for him to write a comparison piece about enterprise browsers and not have the one that is kind of leading the category, at least in certain very distinguishable ways. So that was actually a fail for him that we said no. But as a company, we did not want to be compared feature for feature. We only saw that as a loss. We saw that if there was a way where another company could come off as having an edge for us, if it was a commodity thing where, well, this company offers you these features for this price, which automatically turns into who's willing to give more value for less money, then we lose. There was very little opportunity for us to win in terms of who we are by being in that piece. So we just backed out. Around 6 months later, we reached out to the author and we said, we'll show you a demo, we'll give you a look, but you're not going to write it up and compare us to anyone. That's the deal. And he did it, and he said, wow, you guys are way far and beyond what these other guys are. So I get it. And we're now working on a way for him to highlight what we're doing in a different way than comparing us to everyone else. So we had to lose a half a year of marketing opportunity from this guy based on a decision we made because we know who we were and who we weren't. Thought leadership backlog. What are the next 4 articles that I'm going to write about? Like I mentioned, enablement versus security attacks and breaches was our North Star. For you, it could be, this is the one thing you want to hammer home. By the way, if your next 4 thought leadership pieces are all on the same subject, just different angles or different details of it, unpacking it more, you could even have a 4-part series on the same thing where you go deeper and deeper. Yes, spend a year talking about one thing. One thing. The worst thing that could happen is they'll remember the one thing that you stand for. That's the worst thing that could happen. And it's worth it. Motion style. This, by the way, we had some growing pains with this. I know this is such a small detail to founders, but think about the transitions in videos, the way that our website goes. These are small signals that send a really big message. We had a video editing company like the one that made that magazine award video that was popping things up, and things were showing up and words were coming in and out the way that you saw. And we released that knowing that it wasn't us. And they kept doing it over and over. And we're like, stop, do not do this anymore. We never pop up anywhere. We are fading in. We are slowly transitioning. We are free flowing. We are smooth. Smooth is not popping up. We needed that part of it to be right because that's yet another signal, another piece of the puzzle that tells you who we are. And if we didn't know who we were, we wouldn't know the right answer to that question. And that's what I want to help you understand. If I know that I'm smooth, that I flow, that I'm natural, natural things don't pop up. Natural things ease in, they emerge. Soundtrack. I happen to be a musician. I happen to be a music nerd. I was meticulous about the type of music we chose for videos. For even the conference that we went to in London, I had music playing in our booth on repeat, a specific track that I chose to give you the exact feeling that I wanted you to have in that booth. My team wanted to murder me because they listened to a certain song. It didn't have lyrics, but for literally 48 straight hours. And I need to fix that because that was probably not ideal for them. But the type of music that I chose was very important. The Innovation Award, the one with our customers talking, that was a specific song that was meant to ease you into something cool is happening, but we're not about to throw it at you. We're about to kind of ease you in. Content types. Video in general was something that I was passionate about in the beginning, since the beginning of Island, because video is the easiest, simplest, most attractive way to send a message. It is also the most story-driven way to send a message. And it's really hard to do that in one-off graphics or in articles where you're really relying on someone to read through the whole thing. So we decided to be a video-first company. We created a masterclass of 30 plus videos from our leadership that's on our website. We made a customer stories page that has 12 different videos. We're making our case studies videos and not articles anymore. We are doing everything we can to put video in front. We want FaceTime. That is an expensive but effective decision that we made because video is smooth. Video is instant and easy. We're making it easy. That's also part of our story. When we know who we are, if we write long form articles all the time, we're actually making it a little harder for you to consume who we are. We want to make it easier. We want to make it simpler. Ad placement we talked about. Do we want to be in, we were just having this conversation earlier this week. If you're familiar with native advertisement like Taboola or Outbrain, right? So do we want to be at the bottom of any article without being able to show that we are kind of what you want to be seeing when you want to be seeing it? Maybe not. Maybe that's the wrong place that we should be showing up in the bottom of a New York Times article. Maybe we want to be showing up more intentionally with more purpose. So those are the types of things that we used as kind of North Stars to aid our content. And if you think about all of the examples that I just gave, where you're seeing us at a field event, you're seeing us on social, you're seeing a video that we won an award, then when people come up to you a year later at your next event and say, wow, I see you everywhere, I love what you're doing, they already have an opinion about what we're doing because they've seen it and they put the pieces together. Any questions on any of this until now? Yeah.
Not specifically for this, but I was wondering, how does your brand meet product? And I remember you talked the first time that you were sitting actually with the R&D team right in Israel, and you haven't mentioned at all, like, how does the brand impacts the product, meaning like, micro-copy or the design, or like in terms of, any friction between them. How do you keep them, how do you bring all of this inside the product?
It's a very good question. I did not touch on it at all in this series of sessions.
Do you
oh, yes.
spend like time and energy?
Yeah, our brand team is divided into 3 sets of responsibilities: marketing, internal, and product. And especially since we're building a browser, which is software online. So there are all sorts of touch points where our brand is meant to be front and center, where our story matters a lot. We actually have quite a complicated story for that, which we could get into another time. But we have people there's the security practitioners on the back end, and we have end users who's any employee in their company. And we also have our brand that we want them to encounter, but also their brand. We're allowing the company to brand the browser for them. So there's a lot of different pieces there, but something like the download the browser page is a brand task. I'm writing the messaging for that page. We are designing it. We are creating a logging in and onboarding experience that is branded based on the messaging that we choose, based on the product designs, the brand designs that we choose how to show the product. And we're even getting requests from customers. Okay. We're even getting requests from customers to assist them with branding things and presenting things to their end users. So the answer to how is it should be the same exact thinking should go into it. Is it the same decision? No, because they're different buyers, so to speak. We're not marketing to people who are buying the product. We're marketing to people who are using the product. We're marketing to people who are using the back end and to people who are using the front end, to the actual end users. That means the way we present the information has to be a little different. For example, for end users, the ability to have infinite control over the experience is not something they want to know about, because that means they're under control, right? but them having work be completely safe without anything getting in the way, that is exactly the message we want them to hear. So we reorient the story and the messaging around what they need to hear at that time. But yeah, we also prioritize, we pick and choose where our brand could be most effective in the product and where it is less important, and we focus on those things. So like I mentioned, that download page, that's where they have the least amount of information about who we are, and the most opportunity to kind of grab their attention because they need to look at this in order to do the next step. They can't skip the download page or else they don't have the product. So those are some opportunities we have to place branding intentionally inside the product, and we could talk about that more offline. Okay, there are two more things that I wanted to talk about, and then we could get to questions. This is simply a word. This is not an entire section of the presentation, just an idea on social. There are many other people that aren't me that can give entire workshops and sessions on how to do social effectively. So for me to fit it in right here at the end of the launch is a little of a tease of the Grow version. It's a little of a tease, but I didn't feel right leaving it out because it's such an important part of what we're doing nowadays in terms of marketing our product that it needs to be done right. And here are a few important points. Number one, social media is a social platform. That sounds obvious, but it is not. Many companies, especially early stage, when they are hyper-focused on simply informing the audience, informing the world about what they are and what they're doing, and a lot of it is what, they treat social as a publishing platform, which it can be in an effective way, which means we make announcements on social. We share links to media articles on social. We tell you when a new product release is out on social, right? This is an announcement platform. We can publish things that happened. And it is in a way that, but if you treat it that way and you view it as this is where I'm going to tell people that things are happening, it loses the soul of what social is for, which is engagement. Publishing a newspaper does not interact with you. It puts information on paper, and you decide whether to read it and what to think about it, and then you go on with your day. If social is treated that way, it will be a fraction of the effectiveness of what social can be. And that means when I publish something, I need to think, what is this going to do after they read it? How am I going to get people to engage with it as a reaction to what they're reading and not simply knowing that something happened? And to do that, that means you need to start conversations. You need to enter conversations, which means commenting on conversations in your industry, in your field, with influencers or with colleagues in other companies, with marketers in adjacent industries. You need to test opinions, which means you can state a belief and say agree, disagree. You can say X part of the category is dead. It's time for a new approach. Agree. That's obviously only a small microcosm. I wouldn't say just publish what I just said, but the idea of getting people to disagree with you is actually a win. Because number one, it means they're respecting your opinion and willing to engage with you on it. And the minute you have comments coming back towards you is the minute people will remember you beyond whatever headline you just said. And number three, and this is super crucial, people don't follow companies, they follow people. The first thing we think of when we think of social channels is our company page. And that typically becomes an announcement platform, that publishing place. Because think about if Microsoft would post about something cool, how many of us would actually think of commenting back to Microsoft, right? Who am I even talking to? I don't quite know. I've never had a conversation with an entire company before. The interaction is unnatural, in which case, keeping this in mind, the company page might be better served for making an announcement and steering you in the direction of where to interact with us or how to interact with us. But the way that you're going to get people to talk to you is through your people. And most importantly, the founders and the leadership team, who probably have the biggest following of anyone in your company and have the most credibility and the most leverage in your company to have those conversations in terms of domain expertise, in terms of network, all of those things. So when there is a conversation to be had, don't have it on your company page. Have it with the people in your company. And it could look like this. And this to me is so simple, and it requires one extra level of thinking for how to do it, and it unlocks so much for how to use social right. Think about having an announcement. There's a new generative AI feature for your platform, which is basically everyone's announcement since May, right? We now have generative AI, right? Now, what would that typically look like in a company? Company page announcement. Everyone else, cool, great, can't wait, check this out, awesome. Everyone basically reacting to the announcement, if they're reacting at all. But then you're focusing everyone on the announcement page, the company page. No one's really going to interact with the company page. And at best, you're going to see someone in the company reacting to the company page or saying, this is really cool, but that's not really a conversation. So they have nowhere really to react. But think of this announcement as a story that has real human beings and real angles to the story in it, and how you would unlock conversations to that story. The company page makes the announcement. Then you have the CEO make his message, craft his story around that announcement. Well, the CEO is the head of the business. That's their job, right? So their angle is the business impact, how this is actually going to transform or improve or optimize the company, the organization, or the chief buyer of that organization, right? That's their angle. So they're going to react not by saying this is so amazing, cool. They're going to tell a micro story about that specific angle of the announcement. The CTO, he's running the R&D. He is helping everyone understand the technology and the effort that goes into building this, achievement. They might focus on the team and the achievement and the technological achievement of putting this thing together in record time or innovative, and tag the teammates that were involved. The head of product, they might show you an actual demo, a very low-tech screen capture, which, by the way, is way more effective than heavily produced transitions and everything when it comes to product demos on LinkedIn. We tested that and found that to be true. Show a demo. It's the same announcement, but now people are reacting to actually seeing the thing, and it's coming from the person who is responsible for that thing. Sales, they might show you an asset. Here's a data sheet on what this generative AI tool can do. Or here's them reacting by saying, talk to me about demoing this product, because their network are the buyers. So when we have a chat GPT assistant built into the browser, we had the island page make the announcement, we had the press release linked, and we had a nice little graphic which was meant to just pique your interest. Then we had the CEO talk about the impact of the organizations, allowing enterprises to not only have access to enable and govern access needed to support the business. This is the business impact side. Then we had the CTO, who was also heading product in this scenario, give you a short demo of what it looked like. It happened to be, by the way, that this one got the most attention because people just like to see the damn thing. They like to see it in action. So there was a coordinated effort here. Again, this is just a fraction of what can actually be done down the line. But thinking about this as the people here have the most power, what is the angle of the people in my company and the network that they're exposing this information to can go so much further than simply making an announcement and asking everyone to just like it and say amazing and then move on. The rest is details. Okay, last point. Any question on that, by the way? Okay, we'll move on. Last point. These are just some pointers.
Actually, a small question.
Yes,
Is
Martha.
there anything worth doing besides LinkedIn in an early stage, in your opinion?
Of course. It depends on who you're selling. If you're e-commerce,
Like B2B SaaS.
B2B SaaS.
For Ireland, for example.
Oh, sorry, say it again.
Like take Ireland as an example.
Right.
What do you?
You really have to understand what each platform would accomplish. LinkedIn is certainly the most obvious choice. It is still somehow underrated as a social platform in terms of the impact that it has. I'll give you one reason why I'm saying that. The ratio of creators to consumers on LinkedIn is way out of whack. It's like a tiny percentage of people creating on LinkedIn, and everyone else is just scrolling and reading, which means there's just the numbers. There's way more opportunity to create and way more people that are listening. Whereas on Facebook, everyone's posting their lunch, and everyone, right? There's just a volume of creation that means you have way more competition in terms of the content there. And Twitter the same way. There are very few people that are just on Twitter scrolling. Many people are, or whatever Twitter is called these days, right? Many people are creating and consuming. So that's just one angle of it. Obviously, as opposed to the other platforms, LinkedIn is focused on work, and it makes it easier as a conversion platform. In terms of turning that into business, it does it better than most others. But there's also the flip side, which is CTOs are on Facebook too. CTOs are on Twitter also. They're not necessarily in a buying mindset, but you could use that to your advantage, and you can catch them when others aren't selling to them and actually stand out in that way. It has to be crafted properly. It shouldn't look like a typical ad, because then it will catch them in the wrong way, and it will be out of context, right? So it needs to be more organic and more creative and more content-driven and not conversion-driven. But there are opportunities everywhere. The one mistake, though, to make is to try multiple platforms too soon and treat them the same way, because it's really hard to focus on each one and their strengths. And then find that you're just reposting your LinkedIn on Twitter and reposting your Twitter on Instagram and reposting right? And then you're not really doing anything really well. So we made a choice to go heavy on LinkedIn. A lot of our content is going on Twitter as well, but we're seeing not a lot of engagement there from the right people, although we do know there are a lot of influencers there and security professionals with huge followings there. But we're just not focusing on it. It's not worth our time yet. But we're probably going to start focusing on other channels soon. Good question, though. Yeah.
How frequent is every campaign that you're doing? Like, how frequent?
Mm-hmm. Very good question. Some of it's in our control, some of it isn't. So, like, awards will be if we win it, and when we win it, we'll have to plan a campaign around it. That's why the timing gets a little frantic, because if we win an award, we'll usually know a few weeks in advance. So if we wanted to create something as ambitious as a video, we literally have a few weeks to create a video. But something like thought leadership and a feature release. So we do like to think in quarters like everyone else, which is, and this will have to do with the cadence of each organization in their own right, but we want to get two press releases out each quarter. So every 6 weeks, we want there to be a big announcement that we could rally around. We want to have one thought leadership piece a quarter, where someone from our C-level leadership is writing something thoughtful, long form. If we could get it published in on The Verge or wherever, that would be great. If not, we're going to self-publish anyway on our blog. We're going to put some money behind it to some paid advertising, some organic, and treat that as its own campaign. If we have an asset that we want to promote, we could tell ourselves we want to have 2 assets to promote each quarter. There's a new analyst report. We want to put a paid campaign around that. There's a new infographic that we want to show that directly relates to customer conversations we were just having this past month. Let's release that. So there is a calendar, and Again, that would be if we did a whole workshop on social. That's what that would be revolved around, our calendar. And by the way, we're still not getting it right. We're always playing from behind because we have this unfortunate gift of having a lot to say and have a lot of things happening. And we have our leaders going on podcasts and doing things like that. And every week we set up a whole social schedule 2 weeks in advance. And by the time we get to that week, it's all different because new things happen and we have to delay the press release. And this new podcast suddenly went live. Let's promote it before the buzz goes away. So there's a lot of dynamic activity for that. Okay, when is it time to evolve? And this might be somewhat obvious, but I think it's important. And you've heard me mention growth for 1-2 years, because 2 years is probably a good time to at least start questioning or taking a self-assessment of, okay, what changed since we started saying this story? Around 1 year is when you get tired of saying your story, when you're like, I probably should be saying something else, and you're often not correct. Because 1 year is probably where you got to all the people that you can get to organically, and then the next year is where you need to actually push that story to all the people that aren't in your network or already interacting with you in some way that you are paying to get them to interact, where it needs to hit that next level, like to cross the chasm, so to speak. And that next level is when you're exhausted about telling your story because you've already sold it over and over again, but it's when everyone that's like 2 or 3 degrees away from you needs to start hearing your story. Then probably enough in the market changed where your story needs to evolve, whether it's about your product or your industry or your users. And that's the points that I would make here. Let's say your product expands, right? Steadily over the course of 2 years, you've been adding a couple features. You maybe added a upsell type of thing, or your platform added a few different OSs that you support, or devices, or now you're on mobile, or any sort of thing that you could think of that is suddenly means your product is now a bit different or different enough that you could market it differently in your industry. Your company pivots. This is more of an obvious one that could happen in a month from now or in 2 years from now, but less has to do with the external timeline and more your internal product market fit. But once you pivot, your story changes. End of sentence, right? You don't have the same story if you are marketing to a different buyer or if you are offering something different than what you were offering. Everything needs to change. The market matures, and this is very common for category builders or people who are carving out a specific position in the market. So for example, something like Firebolt, I'm just giving it theoretically. So their position was speed, right? Fastest data warehouse. If suddenly everyone in the market catches up, quite literally, to their speed, they need to now reposition their unique positioning of not being the fastest. If they're no longer the fastest, everyone else figured out their secret sauce. Now I need to think about what I'm doing differently that others aren't doing. Value is commoditized. A lot of times you can do something, you could be first to market with something, and everyone else tacks it onto their product and starts undercutting. And then suddenly, you being the one that used to do this better than everyone else or do this in a way that no one else does, and now you're actually doing it the way everyone else does, but for more. And then you need to figure out how to make yourself more valuable in the eyes of your buyer. Your audience might change. You used to be more of a, C-level purchase, and now you're going to C-level -2. Or you used to be consumer and product-led, and now you're actually selling to businesses, small and medium businesses. That means it's time to evolve that message. And what that means is we need to redifferentiate, find out what makes us different. We need to tell that story differently. And when you're maturing, when you're doing that second brand, then you could start playing the old game, new game. When it's a new brand, you could really just focus on what's new, what didn't exist yet, and what now exists. When you're now differentiating from what exists, you could position yourself against that more. So for us, a category building company, we had very little to position against. So we were simply saying, what if? right? That was our springboard point, what if? But once there's competition, now we can say, okay, here's what everyone else has been doing, and here's why it hasn't been working, and here's the new game. And to go along with that, your personality, your tone, your visuals, they're all sending those signals of we grew up. We have a new message, so we have a new look. We are more mature. We want to show that natural evolution of we are not the startup that we showed up as. We understand what we are better. We understand what you are better, and we are addressing that. We have a new perspective, and we might have a new opinion to share with you as a result of that. So, in short, the way to grow properly in terms of having your customers put all the pieces together of who you are, in terms of making those decisions easier along the way because they never stop coming, is if I know who I am, then I know how to make those decisions. If I'm intentional about it, then it could be clear why my booth looks this way, why my swag looks that way. And when I know why, I could run fast, clearly, with what I'm doing. Don't give away Legos. Meaning, when you have all these different pieces, no pun intended, of who I am, think about how I can leverage those to tell the story that I want to be told through all of those things. Winning an award isn't just an opportunity to say I won an award. It's an opportunity to shape the conversation around what I want them to know. Showing off without showing off, right? Giving them a piece of you. Knowing who you are makes everything else easier. How to be social on social. Number 3, it's not just a publishing platform. It's a way to interact, enter conversations, start conversations, leverage your people, and remember each of your people have a different angle on the conversation that can make the thing way bigger than it used to be. Knowing when to evolve, right? When your company pivots, when your product expands, if your market matures or your audience changes, these are all signals that you need to start from the beginning and do our cognitive behavioral branding from the start. This is incredibly exciting for me to share. I'm sure all of you feel like, okay, now we're just at the beginning. Like, now what? That's the idea. The idea is now to think of, okay, how could I start answering some of these questions of how what I'm trying to do applies in these ways. As I've already discussed with some of you, I'm available to talk that out, even just a chat. This isn't an upsell. I'd be happy to clarify certain things that I've said, even just to follow up on these conversations. But my hope is that we can all take this and build really strong brands from the start, as opposed to giving ourselves the excuse that I need to wait till X destination to kind of do it right then. But no, we have the ability to do it right now. We could plant those seeds now and build something really special that will pay off a year or 2 or 3 or 10 down the line. So thank you very much. Questions?